I think we had a total of like 850 people throughout the weekend on our property. It was like, what? But it was so much fun, so much fun. And we do it toward the end of July each year, and so we're already gearing up for what we're going to do this coming year. So it'll be a lot of fun. So if you missed this one, you gotta come out to next year's Summerfest. We're renting the biggest tent we could get a hold of, and it was full. So that was pretty cool, and everyone lived. All right, so we've been talking about all kinds of different things at Hope Dealers. The word hope in the Greek actually means a joyful, confident expectation of something good. So it's not like the hope that maybe we have where we'll say, well, I hope you make it. You know what I mean? This is like when you have faith in God, when you have faith that something's going to be changed, it's a joyful, confident expectation. Oh, my Lanta, something good's going to happen, right? And so, so when we come to deal that out, we also do that through understanding, through knowledge, and wisdom likes to rest right on those two. So wisdom, or I should say knowledge, is something that you get in your knower, right? But just you can have a lot of knowledge that if you don't understand, there's no application, there's no follow through. Sometimes we don't follow through even when we understand. Because there's a part where we ignore the wisdom part. We're like, nah, it would be wise if I did this. I ain't doing it, you know? And so that's kind of a flesh thing. That's something there, a stubborn part of us that has to be changed. And even in the song, it talked about even in the breaking. So a lot of people don't know what that means. And I can draw that out on the board here once I'm done reiterating what we talked about last time, because I want to catch everybody up to it before we launch into talking more about anger resolution and resolving things. So anyways, remind me if I forget. I want to come back to that. We talked about the last time we got together. There's a difference between when you're without God, that your body kind of thinks it runs everything. Whatever you feel, whatever sensation comes to you, you're like, yeah, I'm going to do that, right? The soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. Your will is your gear shifter in the brain. That's the cingulate in the brain that, you know, we shift into, yeah, I'm doing this, or we go in reverse and say, no, we're not. That's that part of us that's affected by our emotions and affected by the knowledge that we have in our mind. But if we're raised in a way where, and I think everybody has been to a certain degree, right? Especially when we're without God, our body comes first. And so then our soul gets wired. These two gang up on this guy. We are spirit. When we die, this dirt and water is just going to drop off of us. That's what it is, dirt and water. So we got to call a spade a spade. How much power should dirt and water really have when it's trying to tell us what to do? And the soul will get tied into this, whether you felt pain in your body and you're like, oh, I don't know, my big toe hurt tonight, I can't come to class, right? These two are ganging up on, and the spirit's here going, I actually am hungry. Hunger and thirst after the right way of doing things, and you will be filled. And that's not your body that usually wants that, that's your spirit. And so just to understand that part, that we're all spiritual beings. A lot of times I'll have people say, no, I don't believe in God, but I am spiritual. Well, yeah, we're all spiritual. It's very clear when you look in the casket, like, ain't nobody home. Just dirt and water froze up in there, right? So something left, and who you are left the body. So we're all spiritual. It's just when you put your trust in God, you're actually saying, I want the super on my natural. This is natural. I need the super on my natural. I want his love, his ways, his righteousness, his ways of doing things to take control. So what we do is, like, there was a young man here just right before class. He gave his heart to God. He said, yeah, God, I want you to come and take over, right? I want your kingdom, which is the sphere of his rule, to move in. And we talked about that. What that does inside of you is it flips you. Where we're so run by the body, so run by the soul, and the spirit has very little say-so. It's in the background going, hello, low, low, low. I'm over here, here, right? It's way in the background. And so then when we flip it and we make spiritual things first, I'm not talking about getting jiggy and weird and calling that spiritual. I'm just talking about you're aware that you have a destiny, right? and you came to this body, and you will leave this body. And when you know where you're going when you die, it's so important, right? Why is that so important? I told a young man this on Monday night. He was out skating, and I was getting ready to preach out at a park. And I just was talking to him, and I said, isn't it so important to know where you're going when you die? And he said, why? I said, because you will live according to that answer. If you know where you're going, you'll live with the fact that you have a destiny, or not. Right? And so, if that's your understanding. And so, anyways, when we flip this, all of a sudden we have this spiritual awareness that says there's more to me than what I was taught. There's more to just satisfying the body. Right? There's a bigger me here. I mean, God knit me together in my mother's womb, and our soul starts kicking into that fact, and it wants to cooperate then with the spirit to a certain degree. The Bible says to get your mind renewed. What does that mean? Well, there's some things I thought were a certain way, and now I need to renew that part. Like, it's a whole different way than what I thought. And so we began to grow in that. And what's the body's place then, really? Follow us. It's your body's, there's times I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Guess what? My body's got to come with me. Who decided that? My body? No, I decided that in my spirit because I have a destiny, and I got to get to it. And my soul can talk trash. It can say whatever, and try to convince me to do the opposite because it's so used to being in touch with the body. Or I can take charge and say, body, shut your pie hole. You're coming with me. I love you, but you don't get to tell me what to do. That's what happens when God comes in and changes everything. And whenever we try to problem solve without that flip, it's very difficult because now you're warring with yourself. And how many times have I said, if you have a war with yourself and you're in an argument with yourself, you will lose every time. Because the side of you that's winning is the side that is attached to these two, and it has a bigger say-so than what you've been trained to say in your spirit. Right? When I gave my life to Christ, everything changed. Why? Because I began to see there's an end game here. One day I'm going to leave my body. I need to know where I'm going when I die, and I need to know why I'm here right now. Most of the world, even the church world, does not know that. Because how do I know this? I ask people, and they're like, I don't know. So what that does is it gives that floaty feeling like you're just floating out and about. Anxiety comes out of that. And no boundaries come out of that because, like I shared last time, someone comes through these doors right now because I've been here establishing this with a board, with a team, doing all that kind of stuff. There's going to be some boundaries if they come against this place. Why? Because there's a destiny here that we're protecting. There's people involved in that destiny. If I was just floundering around, I guess I'm going to speak tonight, and it doesn't really matter, and it's all about me and how I feel or whatever, I would have no boundaries to protect anyone. But once you know what it means to be a mom, look out. Nobody messing with my kids. Once you know what it's like to be a dad, then there's something that comes out of that because you have purpose, right? Trauma affects our purpose. It blinds us from our purpose. And trauma is at the base of most of our anger issues. Because remember I said anger is a secondary emotion. Well, what's the first thing you felt? The first thing you felt actually is harder for most people to identify. They'll say, I'm ticked off, I'm pissed off. We use all kinds of terms, right? I'm so angry, I'm so agitated, whatever level that we want to call it. We know that we're mad, but we don't really identify and say what we're mad about. I feel unheard. No, I'm mad. Yeah, you're mad because you feel unheard. You're mad because you feel run over. You're mad because you feel shunned. You're mad because you feel like you don't count. Whatever it is, there's a feeling there. Well, think about trauma. Trauma always imparts a lie. So remember the brain, and we'll just go over this real quick. It'd be good if you hear it over and over anyway. That way you can repeat it. Show your friends. So when you build a memory in the brain, a thought is planted. Whether it's truth or a lie, the thought is planted, right? And we actually grow neurons around that thought pattern. And it's great when it's a good thought pattern because you record it in such a lovely way, right? Through your five senses, we just go, oh, thank you for that information. That was a good memory, right? And you can build on that good memory. But when it's a trauma, it records really loud. All your senses record, like you're sucking the air out of the room. And what that does is it starts a tree in the brain. So let's say this picture is so good of all the neurons of different memories that have to do with that same trauma. Even if it only happened to you once, your brain starts to collect everything that even looks like it would be sending the same message. And it grows a tree in your brain because whatever fires together wires together. So the more repeated rejection, the bigger the tree about rejection, right? So if you felt rejected, whether it was your perception or the person actually really did it, it starts that seed, the thing starts to grow, you start collecting all the proof that, yes, I am meant to be rejected. Yes, it's going to happen to me again. And we grow more of a victim stance when it comes to rejection because that's what our tree recorded. And remember, wherever you're a victim, everyone else is a bully. So if someone triggers this tree and it's this big and it gets lit, all these memories light up and come to your defense when it comes. You should feel this way. This is what's happening right now. This is what's really real. It'll do that. And then you're trying to work your job while this is going on. Trying to feed your kids when this is going on. You're like, right? Trying to listen to a church service if this is going on. The key, though, that we've talked about is once the seed of that lie takes root, or that pain takes root, something that violated you, something that subtracted from you and left you without, starts that kind of tree, there's always a lie built around it. So not only do we have anger as a secondary emotion, we have to identify what is the thing that's happening within me, what's the real thing I'm ticked off about, right? And what's the lie attached to it? So sometimes people will go to therapy, sometimes, and they'll be able to identify. Some therapies are more like, we just talk about everything that's in our tree for 2 years. Oh yeah, that's in my tree too. And then I remember the time, yeah, all right, we'll talk about that. And what are we doing? How are we going to take this tree out? We're going to have to get rid of the lie first before anything will change. So I gave the example of, just to rehearse, of the little boy standing on the porch and he's saying, Daddy, please don't go, don't go, don't go. And Dad peels out 100 miles an hour down the road and he never sees him again. That wound that hits so deep will hit in and he'll feel the trauma. The brain automatically goes into, what? What just happened? What? And then eventually it'll go from what, where, who, to why, right? And so little kids especially will look to their surroundings to say, my subconscious is asking why. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. I must be stupid. Maybe I wasn't as good as my brother. Whatever it is, because something occurred, now the answer to the why comes as a lie. You're less than, you're defective. You weren't enough for him to stay here. You're not lovable. Now we have the incident that caused the trauma that's subtracted and the lie built around it to kind of seal the deal. That's like fertilizer to the tree, isn't it? Like that tree gets... Now your filter, as you're growing new neurons, is constantly looking through the fact that that happened to you and this is what's wrong with me. So that's why sometimes we'll say people might have that little blinking sign like reject me, hurt me, shun me, written right here on their forehead, just blinking. Because their tree's lit most of the time. They see life through the trauma of the tree. They also hear it through it. So if I was talking to you and your tree is lit and the lie built around your tree, all those synaptic nerves go, whoo, and I'm talking to you and I'm just trying to tell you, hey, I really appreciate you. Are you going to really hear me through this tree if this is a tree of rejection? In fact, some of your files that are in this tree will answer back immediately. They'll go, oh, stop. That's so dumb. You're so weird. Why do you tell me stuff like that? Or say nothing at all, but you're thinking all that in your head. She doesn't really mean it. Why? Because it's got to filter through this tree. So some people come at counseling, we're like, we got to get the axe and take that tree down. We got to cut it out. Well, it's a part of your brain. So it'd be really sweet if we could just go in there and just like take out the tree. That'd be great. We pray to God and just be like, take out the trees, Lord God. They're just building this kind of thing. Well, here's the thing. You identify the lie, and then forgiveness is needed for you and for anyone that you feel offended you. I forgive them, Lord God. This was a lie. I do have worth. That upsets the tree. All of these files in the tree, now they come up and they're wanting to challenge that new truth that you're putting there. That's a new truth. I don't know. Are you sure that I'm worth? I have value? Are you sure? And then it'll argue with you. That's when you don't argue with yourself, because you'll never win. Because the yeah but's like, yeah, but there was the time. And yeah, but I remember. And yeah, but it's like, shh. This is what God's truth is, and I'm growing a new tree. So literally, you're not cutting down the old one up front. You're putting seed for a new one to grow, and you're choosing to water it. Does that make sense? This one will try to pull you back because it's a bigger tree. But you keep tending to this tree and stop tending to that tree. There's something about, well, I gotta figure all these files out and do all this, and it's a big project, and I've been working on it for 10 years, and all your focus is on just come over here and grow a new tree. That's how the brain works. Remember, we talked about synaptic nerves. You get a new concept. You have to be open to that new concept. The next thing you know, neuroplasticity in your brain stretches to it. No, I'm afraid. Okay, I'm going to try. Oh, and I don't know. But once it commits to growing a new concept, literally once you know, you can't not know. So now you can't unthink that thing. It will challenge this whole set of synaptic nerves. It'll challenge the thought of that. Then you have that argument in your head. That's called fighting the fight of faith, the war of faith. You're there stating, this is my truth. That's a lie. Yeah, but I don't care about the yeah buts. This is my truth. I do have value. See? And especially if you'd enter into that relationship with God that says, I actually have purpose. And that lie comes against my purpose. I can't even function thinking that I'm not lovable. I can't even want to go to a job and work if I think everyone's just going to reject me and that's my life. See? Once you flip this, now we take on different. If you don't flip it, then your body says, be afraid, be very afraid. All these files have talked. We should stay home. We should stay under blankets. We should keep the lights out. We should watch a lot of TV. Escape, escape, escape. Right? It'll do that. So, but when you flip it and you're like, actually, I have purpose, and this hurts like crazy to even have that tree lit. I hate it. But it is what it is. That's those files. That's what was recorded. Whew. I got to breathe through it. I got to get new information. I got to do whatever I can to water my new seed over here while I'm growing new neurons. I am going to be open, and I am going to change. So this is just catching everybody up to where we're at. Now, your soul will jump between these two to begin with. No, I'm with the body on this one. I don't think we should try this hard. It's going to make me cry, and then I'm going to get a headache, and I don't want to do it. Right? They'll team up. But if you can get your mind renewed, which is your soul, your mind, will, and your emotions, regarding your destiny, and these two team up, your body doesn't have a chance. It's got to morph and change. Now, what we ended with is I pray for the sick a lot. I pray for people who have weakness in their body and go after that, because I believe the Bible talks about that. We just did that on Monday night. There was a lady that she couldn't feel these two fingers all the way back on her arm, and before she left there that night, she had full feeling. So I believe that God does that kind of stuff. But guess what? She postured herself as like, no, I have a destiny, and we're not going to let this stay in the way. I believe God can. See, then her soul joined in and was like, he can. And there was an effect it had on the body. But when it's flipped over here and you're like, everything hurts, I can't do this, and you focus on that, your soul feeds that, you actually get sick. Did you know that? The wounds can make your body sick. And so, and here's your spirit going, hello, God's got a better plan. I'm over here, here, here. And it feels so far away. So as soon as we get in touch with that, being where we're grounded, to be grounded, you've got to put the first thing first. Spiritual things come first. You were a spirit before you got in the body, and you're a spirit when you're in the body. And when your body drops off of you, you'll be standing here as a spirit. Yeah? So that's a base to jump off of some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. Now, anger resolution is different than anger management because anybody can try to white knuckle something or just manage a situation. It's different when you actually have to go in and resolve it. Resolution means, we're not leaving here until I get that first emotion healed and then calm down that second emotion on top of it, right? All right, so we got this, so I'm going to erase that. How you doing tonight? Everybody's doing okay? All right. Part of anger we have to establish is anger is not a sin. It's an emotion that's a red flag that's letting us know we want something to stop. That's all it is. The problem is anger out of control doesn't look like I want something to stop. It's anger out of control is I will hurt you to get this stop. I will hurt myself. I'm hurting somebody. Something's going down here, but we're going to get this to stop. And we talked about how anger can be a 1 to a 10. And, you're going up the ladder all the way up to a 10. Most people have not had the training under the age of 7 especially to know how to walk this ladder and then walk back down. See, we should never get to a 10, ever. That is for saving a life. That's for a bear's coming at you. That's for something where it's like, you're coming back at it. Otherwise, we don't need a 10. Your most powerful spot we talked about is at a 1. The brain can't even process what it's supposed to do if it's starting to lose process at a 5. Like you're all over and you can't concentrate on what you need to do. And then the closer you get to the 10, the more you're going to want to lock in on the thing you think you're mad at. The wife, the husband, your dog, whatever it is. And suddenly when you do that, the closer you are to a 10, everything reality, all of this out here leaves. Cause and effect ain't really there because you're mad at the person in front of you or the item in front of you or whatever. So here we have this. We got to learn how to stay below a 5. If you sense yourself get to a 5, well, then we got to pull that puppy down, don't we? So here's the problem. A burst of adrenaline can drag you up to a 5 right now. For some people, it can drag you to a 10, and then you're irrational, and you can't really think straight. Now, you go beyond a 10, that's when you've entered rage. Rage is this thing that says, I want something to stop, but I don't believe it ever will. I don't believe you care about me, so I don't care about you, so anything goes. That's a really dangerous spot to be at, isn't it? Right? So here we are trying to control it on this level. Some of us have come up into rage. I did some raging stuff when I was a kid. I didn't know not to go past a 5. Because what happens is you say, don't go past a 5. Right? Or you're going to get in trouble. And kids are this is what we think they're supposed to do. Okay, Mom. And suddenly you talk really kind to your brother or whatever it is. That doesn't work. Adrenaline has gone off, cortisol is shooting through the person's veins, and now here we are, we're at a 5. How would they have the skill to bring themselves back down? Because most adults, if I say, how are you going to do that? They don't know. So how would a child automatically know how to bring themselves back down? So they'll get in a lot of trouble from lack of knowledge. So it behooves us to have the skill so we can turn around and role model that skill to them. How many of you had that role model to you when you were growing up? Hands are flying up all over. Yeah. No, I didn't either. So, in fact, I've shared the story where I went to school and kindergarten was my first day, and I was 4 years old, going to be 5, and so I went to school early, so even less skills. And my father had taught us that, if somebody comes at you, something's unsafe or whatever, and you can't get out of the situation, you pop the person in the nose as hard as you can. Then you have the option of running or taking care of business. So, okay, Dad, I'm going to make my dad proud or whatever. So first day of school, this little boy, to my thinking, was picking on this little girl. And she said, stop. Now, she might have just went, stop. And I was like, oh, because I was raised where there was a lot of violence and stuff. And so my interpreter in my brain, in my little tree I had going on, said, this guy's trying to hurt her. So I didn't even say anything to him. I just hauled off and popped him in the nose. And then blood coming down, the whole thing. And I'm thinking, I saved the day. I saved her. Everyone's going to be so proud. And no one was proud. In fact, the teacher was kind of upset. And the little girl was even upset. Why did you do that? And I'm like, what? I didn't know. Next memory I have, there was a big space in between, is me hiding underneath the table and my mom standing in the doorway of the classroom going, Mary, you need to come out. We're going home. So when you think about that, that's kind of intense. And I got in trouble, which is confusing because I was told one thing and then got in trouble for the other. See what I'm saying? So a lot of us had that role model, but I certainly did not know how to not be at a 5. I didn't know how to do that. So that catches us up quite a bit. Then we talked about passive-aggressive versus aggressive behavior. How many of you, since the last time we talked, started recognizing passive-aggressive versus aggressive behavior? Some of you were watching that. You're like, yeah. Passive-aggressive is the harder one to deal with than an aggressive person. Aggressive person lays their cards all out, don't they? You're like, yep, they're mad, and they're losing it right now. I don't know if they lost their mind, but I'm not here to help them find it. I'm just going to back out of the situation. It's very aggressive, and they'll start naming what they're mad about, which is usually not really what they're mad about because anger is a secondary emotion. We got to find the first one. Maybe they feel unheard or something like that. But passive-aggressive behavior is the one that drives everybody. There's something about it that it's like a slippery fish. You can't really get a hold of it. They change the subject, change the view. Did you say that? I don't remember you saying that to me. You told me about that? I don't remember that. See, and these are behaviors that get at a person in an aggressive way, but we're doing passively. So the brain can't really register. It's called double messaging. It would be like if I looked at you and said, you're so handsome. But I'm shaking my head no, and your brain's trying to interpret, why are you doing that while you're telling me something else? So passive-aggressive behavior does that in the brain, and it will bring people to a breaking point. And usually a good passive-aggressive, they're good at is what I mean. They're not being good, but they're good at it. Will then, at your breaking point, turn and say, see, this is what I have to live with. Like, look at you. Like you're losing your mind. I'm not losing my mind. You need to get some counseling. You need to do whatever. Because they work it, and they work it until you snap. Right? And when you snap, you know you lost your mind, and you're trying to find it, and you can't, and it makes it hard. So that's the point. I said I was going to come back and begin to deal with the passive-aggressive versus the aggressive. Now, to deal with either one of them out here, do we learn the skills first of how to deal with them? No. We learn the skills first of how to deal with us. Yeah? So if a person's passive-aggressive or aggressive around me, I'm not going to a 5. They want to lose their mind on something, they can do that. They can try to manipulate or whatever. I'm going to stay at a 1. Because that's where I think the most clear. That's where I can make great decisions. And why do I want to equal their emotional state? Now, sometimes we're trained to equal people's emotional states by how we're raised. Or we feel emotionally responsible for that other person. We're responsible for how they feel. And that's a big thing in society right now. Look at how you made me feel. Y'all could go off on me right now. I'm going to feel how I choose to feel. I can't blame you for it. That's a new concept for a lot of people, right? Just because you're losing your mind on something doesn't mean I'm going to equal that or feel what you feel. I might not feel that at all and be like, wow, you're really upset about that. Well, what upsets people who are upset is they want you to feel what they're feeling. I don't have to go there. I can still help you. I don't have to lose it if you're losing it. So just give it a little time so you can think about that. Because here we are, we're going from a 1 to a 10, or you go to a 3 even. Most people who are aggressive or even passive aggressive are trying to get a reaction out of you. They're watching to see how fast are you going to go up that ladder. Ooh, when I say that to him, he goes to a 5 like in a heartbeat. So if we get in an argument, that's going to be the button I'm going to push. So he loses it. So then I can stay calm, and when he loses it, I can turn around and say, see, this is what I have to live with. Look at you. You're always losing it. What's your problem? I'm not even doing anything. I'm not doing anything. And your brain goes, because you know they've been doing something the whole time, but now you can't even think of what they were doing because you're so upset, and you're past the 5 at this point. That's what's wicked about passive-aggressive behavior. It's and a lot of times passive people who have learned to control situations or get control or whatever don't like to be around people who can keep it at a 1. There's just something about her I don't like. I haven't even said anything to you. I might have smiled at you. Yeah, she's shady. Because they don't know how to work you. They can already feel, I can't work that person. I don't know, I can't get in with that person. So you feel shady to them. Right? Yeah, you're recognizing. So there's something to the power of staying toward the 1. If you're a wrestler, I mean, I grew up in a wrestling family. So they didn't have girls wrestling back then, or I probably would have been in on it because I always wrestled my brothers. And so I know all the moves and all that kind of stuff because they had to have somebody to practice with. So I got beat up a lot. But anyways, they were bigger than me. But in any case, there's something about that. If you want to be a good wrestler, you have to stay as close to a 1 as possible. That little kid, that person who starts to get mad because they got flipped on their back and they are trying to get out of the move or whatever, and they start to escalate, they're going to lose that match just because they escalated. The belief is that the more power we have is the more angry we are. That's when I have the most power. So now we're going to tap adrenaline that really makes your brain not think clear at all to try to conquer whatever thing is in front of us. So like I said before, to deal with an aggressive or a passive-aggressive person, we have to deal with ourselves first, which means we have to know ourselves. That's why we went through talking about what do you look like when you first start to get angry. Remember mine? If you say something to me, if you came in here and I stuck, it hit a button in me or whatever, I would probably cock my hip like this, right? And then I'd start filtering, which means I have to turn my head to the side because I'm hearing you differently now. What are you really trying to say? Now I'm starting to move into anger. So if I'm going to have good boundaries, I have to make sure I don't go into that mode. So you're cussing me out or whatever's going on or lying to me or whatever it is, and I just stay like I am right now. I don't need that. Soon as I recognize that about myself, as soon as I turn into that, my head cocks, then there's a little thing, like I said, it's like a trigger finger. My hand starts going like that. That's me debating things. Like I'm debating what I'm going to say to you right now. Because now you're making me mad. See the difference? And so if we know ourselves, we'll know by our body action what's happening. You'll feel a flush come up in your throat, and suddenly some people feel like their ears get hot. Well, that's not a time to solve world peace. Right? That's like, oh, okay, I'm moving into an area. I need to figure out a way to bring it back down, because if I don't do that, things are going to end up not so pretty here, right? And so you have to know that you have the right to back out of a situation whenever possible, to be able to say, I want to think about this for a little bit. I go for a walk around the block or whatever. I really want to talk to you about this, but not the way I am right now, right? You're thinking in your head. And you take some time to get some space, come at it a little bit different, make up your mind. I'm not going up to a 5 to answer this question, to do this or whatever. And then you're looking for what area, what tree did they just touch? Because if I do this and I'm doing this, then if I do the cheek thing, right? It's like breathing changes. If I'm doing that, you touched a tree that there's a lie built around. That's the only way you could get me to a 5 or an 8. And this thing is lighting up. And remember what I said, the underside of the brain is supposed to be the feel-good center of the brain. You touch that and light up a negative tree or two, now it's going to trump the top part of your brain, and you're not going to think right. Your decision-making is going to be off. It's going to be about you and winning and how dare you. And then your tunnel vision will start happening, and it'll be like, Ashley, and that's all you'll want, right? That's why when we argue as couples or as friends, but definitely as couples, when we're starting out in an argument, we might look at each other and then walk away. Yeah, well, you know what? And we'll do a lot of this because we know if we stop and look each other in the eye, it's going to go higher than we can control. That's why we avoid each other. That's why we're talking and one's going into one room and ladies slamming stuff from the dishwasher into the sink, still talking. Well, you know what? And we're arguing like this because we know if we just sat on the couch and looked at each other, something big would have to break or we're going to do something dumb. We have to come down on that escalation. Amen? What if your body's used to being in control? Your body and your soul team up, and you're like, oh, did you see what she said? You know what? You know what? I mean, your body is going to have these urges to just somebody. It's like, I'm going to slap kick you across this room. You have a nice day, too. You're like right there. And it's because we have that training and we haven't said, I have to control me. In any situation, with everything that we do, we have to look at ourselves first. You lose control of this, you can't put the blame on someone else. Yeah, but he said and she did and all that. Sorry, you're 100% responsible for your own behavior. I'm going to say that again. You are 100% responsible for your own behavior. Even if I give you a dirty look. Right? And you smash my car. Well, that's my fault because I gave you a dirty look. No, you're 100% responsible for your behavior. We have to own that. Very difficult as people are coming up in the house. You got teenagers or different things like that. They don't like owning their behavior. They haven't been taught to own their behavior. Oh, it's torturous. They will fight you tooth and nail. And all you're looking for is them to look at you and go, yeah, I'm sorry, I screwed up. We could just move on. But no, that's not how it's set up. There's something about vying for power at that age. There's something about coming into the thing where like, I'm not owning it. I'm just not owning it. Well, if you don't own it then, and you didn't learn how to own it when you're in grade school, how are you going to own it in your marriage when you're 30 years old? Eventually, we have to own it. Now, I don't go around owning somebody else's stuff. Some people will do that. Will swing all the way over trying to fix everything. I'll own everything you did and what I did too. No, I'm just going to own my stuff. And I am sorry I said that to you. Right? I don't know that I'm always going to say, I'm sorry that you feel that way, or I made you feel that way, or those types of things, because you feel what you feel because of your choices. I feel what I feel because of mine. That's rough stuff. But it's skill. It's skill. Good verbal judo comes out of knowing who you are, of having control toward the one, then you can think about what you're going to say, and you slow everything down. Adrenaline, when it comes to correcting, let's say your teenager, yourself, whatever it is, you can talk trash to yourself and be adrenalized, and stuff will come out your mouth that you're like extra mean to you. Look at you, because you're all adrenalized, and you just like cut yourself down. Well, you'll do that to other people also because there's too much adrenaline in your body. Best thing you can do is shut the pie hole, zip it, breathe, go for a walk. I'm not saying nothing till I sort this out. Don't grab for the first lever. Don't grab for the first thing in front of you or the first thing that goes across your mind, because those things have long-term effect. It's very difficult to use adrenaline and I trash her, start a whole new tree for her of trauma, and then later say, yeah, so I'm sorry. And then she's just over it. Have you ever just been over it? No, a seed got planted and there's a tree growing already. We best get in there and uproot it. It might have attached to a tree that was already going on and made that thing even bigger. So it's best if we just close her down, breathe, go for a walk, do what you got to do. I'm not a fan of what's been trained in the past of like punch a pillow and those kinds of things, because it's actually been trained that as you're punching a pillow, your neurons in your brain are experiencing the fight mode, and you like it. So if there's no pillow after a while, there's a face. It actually makes it worse, right? So whatever, go for a run if you have a hard time getting adrenaline out. So, and figure this, it takes about an hour and a half to get it out of your system if you've had a high adrenaline moment. So you got to walk it off. So why is that important to know? Well, that's all part of the game plan of staying at a 1. It's like, I'm adrenalized right now, so we're not having this conversation. My child can actually wait to be disciplined, because when I walk into their room, I want to say the right thing with the voice tone that's right and loving, but just. So it's not like they're going to get out of it if they did something wrong. But I can sound just like this when I'm giving them instruction or taking their video game from them. And actually, they don't know what to do with that, because they're like, why are they so calm? This is creepy. Something more must be planned. No, you're just trying to stay at a 1. And we talked about how, my son's a Russian martial artist, and that's one of the things he trains is stay at a 1, stay at a 1. Well, who do you work on to stay at a 1? You got to work on yourself. So the whole time you think you're coming to class and you're going to learn self-defense, and we're going to just be in this thing for that other person. So if they come at me like this, I'm going to do this. And no. The whole part of it is controlling yourself, knowing yourself, understanding your emotions, where to file those, how to unpack those, and staying in control that you're at a 1. Now whatever moves you do is because they're losing it. Right? So sometimes people will take karate or something like that because they're tired of being picked on, and they're just going to be in these classes, and they're gearing up to, take out the bad guy and protect themselves and all that kind of stuff. But you have to learn control of yourself. That's the most important. Amen? And I remember being mad. I was mad that I didn't get some of those skills. I'm like, great, now I got another thing to work on. I can't even talk to my husband. I remember years ago, I'd be like, well, I'm trying to stay at a 1. I'm like, so, can't say that. And it's just like everything slowed so down because I couldn't think of what I could say that would be appropriate, and I didn't have good verbal judo. In fact, the way I was raised, we had a lot of slang terms. You had the cussing, but you had slang terms. Things that you throw out to be descriptive. And, that way you're getting at the person even more. Let me draw you a picture. And they're like, what? So can't say that, can't do that, can't do the other thing. And then sometimes I'd be like, I don't know what to say, and I'd have to walk off. We're going to have to talk about this later. Because I had to go and find what is good verbal judo. Something where I'm having a boundary for myself. I'm not drawing a boundary on that person. I'm letting the person know how I feel. I'm respecting myself. I'm doing it at a quiet. Number one. And I slow everything down. Right? I didn't have that skill. It took a bit. But it was crazy how fast certain things were settled just from my side because I slowed it down. I was like, this is weird. Like, we just actually resolved that. That was like 30 seconds or to a minute. And it was solved because there was no adrenaline required. Now, equaling other people's energy is how a lot of times people will say it. So if you came in here and I was adrenalized and I was trying to act like I wasn't adrenalized, still teach the class would come up into a form of adrenaline. They've proven that just because there's this thing in the atmosphere of like, you just like pheromones off of a woman when you see a puppy or a baby, you're like, oh, pheromones just come off. They can infrared that and see like, whoa, that lady's lit with pheromones coming off of her body. Well, they can also infrared some of these other things, and they know that, if somebody's just agitated, just yeah. So how are you guys? See, I'm giving a whole impulse where the feeling of the room is like, can I relax right now? Because she's like, I don't know what she's unpredictable. You can have a group of people stand in a circle. Maybe their posture is like this, and they're standing there talking, and just have somebody who's agitated. They're not saying anything. All of a sudden, the circle will turn and be like, what? Because there's an energy coming off, right? So there's something different about us just being in a spot where we just exude calmness in situations. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So as we're trying to learn this, we have to know when we lost it and how to bring ourselves back down. So if you know, just saying, okay, come back down, everything's going to go, no. You might want to go for a walk and then talk to yourself about bringing it back down and think about, why am I so angry? What is the real thing? Peel the onion and see what is really at the core. Oh, I just felt like they never listened to me. Oh, I thought you guys were arguing about such and such. Well, we were, but the reason I'm mad is because I don't feel heard. See, identifying and pulling that down and grabbing a hold of it is the power of that assessment. So you assess yourself. So if you were a martial artist and I don't know, maybe you're in the military or something and a room of people were coming at you and they didn't have good intent and you could stay out of one, you've assessed yourself and now you've assessed the people. You can almost predict what they're going to do. Who's the most aggressive in the room? Because you've got time to read that. You got time to take social cues. So we did preschool for many years and foster care and had 12 kids for a long time and things like that. And one thing you have to do to survive that is understand social cues. You can have two people, well, we're going to have a family meeting about this. All right, you sit them down or whatever. And one's posture is absolute fear, just the way they're breathing. And no, I never even said that, and they come up in this, and it's absolute fear, even if they're angry. Social cue. And the other person is just acting just bitter. Just, I don't care what you think. This whole thing's stupid, right? There's social cues that we do that should let us know if we're at a 1, this is what I'm dealing with. That person's afraid. That person's disgusted. They probably haven't been heard for years. So what we do is talk quieter and with more meaning and made sure each person got a chance to talk. Nope, you can't talk right now. It's so-and-so's turn. And You feel like you got it all out, and they'll get it all out. All right, now you can go. Right? It was just interesting how it would de-escalate the whole situation. Now, how many times do we feel bothered having to solve things? Especially with kids or at work or whatever. We're like, all right, sit down. You know? Tired of you guys. We're doing this, or let's just get this over with. Well, you already set a tone for them to feel your energy that you're exuding. And so they come up trying to please whatever and convince and in front of that kind of judge. No, it needs to be calm. And if they go escalate, you go, oh, you don't need to use that tone. Let's bring it down a little bit. All right, I hear you. You say things like that. I hear you. Just breathe. All right, go ahead. And you take postures like this, like you're really listening. But when we're in a hurry, our postures are more like, well, then what did you say to him? You know, we're disgusted. They're even fighting because now the movie's halfway through and I can't rewind it and, you know, or whatever, you know. So we've got other agendas and now this is the big disrupt. Well, don't solve it during another agenda. There are times you make people wait. Yeah, once this is done, we're going to talk about it. And actually, they do better having to wait. Because by the time you get to talking about it, they've already de-escalated some. And the big crescendo that was going to be, all of a sudden, is not so much. And many times we would come with the kids, because we had 5 13-year-old girls at one time. I'm still here. I'm a little shaky, but I'm still here. So anyways, what would happen is we'd say, all right, we got, he'll be back in about 45 minutes, and then we can all sit down and talk about this. 45 minutes? Yep. You guys can clean your room or do whatever you want until we're done doing that. Well, then all of a sudden it went down to not so much. And then we go to solve it. We solved it already. Sure we don't need to have a family meeting? No, we already talked about it. Everything's good. It was just weird. But if we did the thing, we're going to solve this now. I got stuff I got to do. You kids are always interrupting everything. How many times do I have to? These are big questions. And remember, we learned in phase 1, if I ask you a question, how many times do I have to? Your brain goes porous because it needs to answer a question. Then I don't let you answer it, and I give you the answer. And a lot of times I'm mad, right? So I'm telling you something of an answer that's actually more wounding. And you took it even more hardcore because your brain's open. It's like the neuroplasticity. When you ask a question, it goes, how many times do I have to tell you kids? Knock that off. And your brain goes, I don't know how many times. And it wants to grow into that. I tell you how many times. You don't listen. You never listen. See? So what I'm telling you, right as you became porous and you opened up, I'm giving you a disgust about yourself and how you failed. That's what you're going to record. And later, you won't even remember what the argument or whatever it was about. You just know, that's how dad feels about me. That's how mom feels about me. That's how so-and-so feels about me. I can't ever do anything right. Anybody experience that here? Even more honest, anybody do that here? I have. Yeah, you try not to, but afterwards you're like, that was not a good mom move. You know? There's a night you go before the Lord, sorry about that, Lord. Then sometimes you go in your kid's bedroom and say, look, that was not a good mom moment or a good dad moment, I'm sorry. I just get angry because da-da-da-da. And that role models to people that, oh, dad doesn't hate me, mom doesn't hate me. They're humans too. Huh. Interesting. You know? And we're able to rein that back. So, but if you don't know yourself at a 1, you're not going to know yourself at a 5. How calm's your calm? I am calm. Really? I'm not yelling. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and passive-aggressive sometimes, when they're really, really fuming, they say nothing at all, which drives everyone around them cray-cray. It's called silent knighting a person. You're like, and then they say, so what are we going to do about that? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Ho, ho, ho. Not a good skill. If you don't want to talk about it, you have to say, I don't want to talk about that right now. I need to process some things, but I will talk about it and give the person a time. So they don't end up feeling like you're stonewalling them while you're silent nighting them. Yeah? It's hard because a lot of times we'll learn these skills and that's what I need to do. But when you go to do it, it doesn't come automatic. So just so you're aware, like, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that next time. But you almost always go to the thing that you're used to doing, and then you have to back up the train and be like, hold on a second. I got something else new here in the boxcar, and slow everything down even farther so you can try to demonstrate that thing. Right? Yeah. We've been wounded a lot in life, not because somebody intentionally wanted to build a tree in our brain. Sometimes their tree in their brain is so lit and they're so adrenalized that the lies that they're believing puke out onto you. And then you're like, whoa. And it builds a memory of the stink of it. And that's the thing we're actually trying to avoid in arguments. Many times people run interference, do whatever they can because they're like, I don't want to get thrown up on. I don't want to re-experience that. I can't handle it. Right? So we don't let the other person talk. We don't do those different skills that it would take to have the conversation because we already know we're going to get hurt. This is what I had to teach myself. Okay, so if I'm going to get hurt, I'm not going to die. Am I? The feeling is, though, I'll probably die. If I don't get on top of this and get in front of this and get this thing corrected and tell them a certain thing, and they need to understand, it wasn't my fault, and I was, because I'm really fearing that something's going to be said, and I'm going to feel that feeling again, and I'll feel like I'm going to die. And I hate that feeling. But the truth is, we don't die from that. The same way your nervous system, everybody's nervous system is different. But it's interesting, some people's synaptic nerves are trained in such a way that you can barely touch them and they go, ow, don't, right? And somebody else, you like slug them in the arm and they just keep working and they're like, what do you want? They don't even feel that might actually have hurt, right? So this is what they've proven, that a lot of what we feel is interpretation. Let that one soak. Our belief systems about what we feel add to the pain or subtract from the pain. I know, it's crazy. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't feel, we should feel, right? But you take a child who, they heard another child scream when they got a shot, right? And they're next up. They're like, I want to go in there, I don't, And they're already geared. Their whole nervous system is like, all right, I might die from this, but I don't know. It's going to hurt so bad because I heard him scream and and that's where I, gave the story before of my son. I was hearing parents actually lie to their kids and they'd be like, it's not going to hurt at all, honey. You just go, it's just a little poke. I don't even like when nurses say, it'll just be a little poke. No, it's going to hurt. So, what's the interpretation, though, we put to it? It's going to hurt a little, or you're going to feel a poke like this, Or there's some shots that have a little bit of sting, but you just breathe through that. So I told my son, this is what it's going to feel like, and I gave him a little cheaper dealer. He goes, ow, and I said, well, that's what it's going to feel like. Oh, I could do that. And he went in there, got the shot, and came out. No biggie. But if I let his interpretation grow in his mind, his breathing, because people die in there, they get a shot and it's just like they stab you and, because it can grow in your mind and then you'll actually feel it. When it goes in, you will actually feel it more because you set your nervous system up to do so. Crazy, huh? So I'm not saying I don't want to feel anything and tell your body not to feel. That's dissociation. But what I am saying is there is something to allowing the flesh or your body and your soul team up. Your spirit needs to give it a reality check. It's going to feel like a poke. I've been stung by a bee. I lived through that. I can do this shot. It's only a second or two. I can do this. It's a training. Now what we've been trained, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to be truthful. Don't trigger my tree. Right? And the term trigger is being used way too much. Because a person who's been through extreme trauma, you trigger their tree, right? Just by being you, and you're not trying to hurt them, that can happen. Then they have to give themselves a reality check. You can't control their insides. And in fact, at their point, you can't say anything to get their tree to de-escalate. Who's got to de-escalate it? They do. They got to grab a hold of that and be like, okay, here's what's real. I'm not dying right now. He did not actually mean that, or whatever it is. But when we trigger hardcore memories, I know what it's like to have flashbacks and PTSD, and I lived through all of that. And I'm not lessening the effect of it. But if we don't grab a hold of it from the angle of like, I'm trying to grow a new tree here, you don't get to control me, right? I'm going to speak truth, and I'm not going to keep rehearsing what you want to say. Yes, that did happen. I acknowledge it. But I am in the now, and what's happening in the now, I get to make a choice about right now, in this moment. I'm going to make a good choice right now. This is how I choose to feel right now. Sounds like it should be easy, but it's hard. But if you don't do that, panic disorder will start to set in. And these trees will rule where you never get to grow another thing. We're more in control of ourselves than we believe. Victim mentality is like, I'm just walking through life and you never know what's going to happen to me. No, I get up in the morning and I live life. I'm not surviving it. I'm making choices of how I'm going to live it. And if something happens, I'll have to make a choice around that thing. I don't automatically go, something happened. And I'm just there, lost. No? And I'm speaking out of sexual abuse, incest, all the stuff that happened to me. I know what it's like to be triggered and you cannot think straight. You are back in time, you are not here. So sometimes arguments are somebody said something to you when you were trying to settle something about who left their socks on the floor, and somebody says something derogatory, it hits this tree, lights up the whole thing, and so you what? You think I'm nothing? That's what I am to this family? Now, we're actually talking about the socks that are laying on the floor. So we're not solving world peace, so let's bring it down. Bring it down to a really low level, right? Now think about it. I've never been in the room where they're trying to solve world peace, but I would bet they're not yelling at each other. One, it'd be very unprofessional, and two, they'd get nothing done. Whoever has the biggest mouth wins. So, no, it's they're able to state facts. Now, I disagree with you. No, we'll probably go to war with you if you do that. Just saying. I mean, that's how they're going to talk about it. So we're trying to solve something small about the socks laying on the floor, and we'll posture ourselves like we're trying to solve world peace. And we have to give a reality check to stay at a 1. The reality check is like, it's socks on the floor. No one's dying here. Okay? So it might be an irritant that you say, hey, haven't we talked about that before? Can you put those in the laundry? Yeah, but I've had to say that like 3 times. Well, eventually they'll get it. Smacking them down ain't going to change it. All they do is learn to be more afraid of you, but not understand the importance of why it's so important to get the socks put away. Right? And no. It's a lot to take in. So if you're in a spot where this gets lit and you know you can't speak out of this, you're filtering everything through this big old tree. I'm hearing you through this tree. You ever been in an argument where you'll say, what is that supposed to mean? Right? And if someone was watching, you could see, well, that person just clearly stated this. I can tell you what they meant. But you're lit, so you don't hear that. You're like, what is that supposed to mean? Are you saying? And the lie will come up. You're saying that I'm stupid? Is that what you're saying? Well, I never said that. Well, you're inferring it. See how I can imitate? Yeah, those are our arguments. That's why. I could go there and play that part really easy because I've been in those arguments, or I've watched many, many people do that. Because part of it is that sensation of I'm trying to hear you through my tree, and I can't really hear what you're saying because my pain is here. What are you saying? Oh, you're poking my pain? Is that what you're doing? That's why both parties need to stay calm and be able to give reality checks. Like, okay, are you escalating right now? Because I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. I really love you, and I want you to hear what I'm saying. Let's just take a break for a little bit, and then we do. I come back now, and I rephrase it, or I say it slow in a different way. How many of you were raised where people take the time to do that? Yeah, that's good. There's a couple. It's not a total loss, right? And there's something with the busier life gets, the more we want things now. If you can order McDonald's in a certain amount of time, this problem, this thing that's going on between us needs to be settled now. Just get over it. Well, here's a big one. If you really want to be passive aggressive and light up somebody and hit every tree that's negative, you just say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Dr. Phil throws that in an emotional rape category. That's where he throws it in because it's too late. They actually already do have feelings. And they're feeling it right now. And now you're telling them they shouldn't feel that way, which causes them to have to defend the fact that they already have the feelings. Now you've just escalated the fight. So if I was to say, I'm trying to understand why you'd feel that way. My thinking is not like that, but I'm trying to understand you. So I really want to understand where you're coming from. That's different than, you shouldn't. And then usually there's a body reaction. Well, you shouldn't feel that way. What? Now there's a disgust toward me because I have feelings? Yeah? So that's why it's in the category of emotional rape, because they feel what they feel and they already feel it. So now we better acknowledge the feelings, whether you think it's right to feel that way or not. It's too late. They already do. They already feel that way. So now we have to go, well, okay, if they're feeling that, then this is how I have to adjust myself. I want to make sure their tree is calm, though, when I'm talking to them. And I got to make sure that mine is. And how you'll know, too, is there'll be none of this. Or leaning forward. Or using your hand in a certain way when you're talking. Know what I mean? I'm not yelling. You kids just need to learn how to get over it. There's different, you can go gangster out the side. Get over it. And that's the posture. If I come off of this hip like this and I go, you just need to get over it, that means I'm about to disengage and there's nothing you can do about it and I had the last word. Over it. And then I walk off. Because I showed you by my body, I'm not in this to stay in it. I've already postured. I'm leaving. I got stuff to do. That's another one. See, I'm turned to the side. How long is this going to go on, huh? How long do you need to talk about this? These are all things that cause other people to escalate because our body posture is in the wrong thing, right? So what is your most relaxed? If You knew I was mad at all of you at the same time here tonight. And you were going to talk to me, and I'm like a pistol here tonight. And I'm just waiting to talk to you. What would be your body posture? What would be your most calm? Knowing that I'm ticked off, how would you look? Show me that. That's pretty much your posture most of the time, right? Yeah. Yeah? It's a posture that has you agreeing to have good eye contact. It isn't eye contact. Like, I'm looking at you. You're not doing anything funny with your mouth. Any of that stuff. It's just, you're just there. You're open. Right? So there's an open, this is open, like this. So did you want to talk? This is not. Are we going to talk about this or what? Just like last time. You said we were going to talk about it, but we're not talking about it. That's a problem for me. And then the leaning forward, right? All of those things bait for a fight. So you got to be good to stay at the one when somebody's posture is all up in your grill. See, there's a form of control too, especially if you're taller than that person and you come on them like this and you're in their face. So you're leaning into them where they're like, I can't breathe, get off me. It's very intimidating. So, but it's also a posture that if you're sitting on the couch and you're hardly saying anything and you glance over once and that's it, that's also disrespecting of that person. Like, I value this conversation, just not a lot. That's what we're telling them, right? So we're giving value statements while we're devaluing them. Tapping of the foot, like, come on, let's get going. Any of those things, looking at your watch, constantly checking your phone to see what time it is or if someone called. You want to escalate that other person? That's how you do it. There's something about valuing. I value what you say, even if I don't agree with it. It's how you think. And I want to know what makes you think the way you think. I might learn something from you. I might. That's the open heart. The closed heart is, I already settled this in my brain. I can learn nothing from you. You don't even know what you're doing. And then we're going to go on and on with this conversation. We've already settled this conversation. See the disgust? See, body action is so big. 96% of how we register stuff is by what you see. Now, your hearing port hears what's being said and looks to see if you're matching that. That's why I said, man, you're a good-looking guy. And I'm shaking my head no while I'm giving him a compliment. That's like, what? So you got to match. If you're like, I'm not mad, it can't be like, I'm not mad. Well, then your body should be calm. Better to say, I'm still mad, but I think I can control myself. Let's just slow everything down so we're directed and not driven. Okay? I don't want to fight with you. I love you too much. See, I slowed everything down. The whole feeling changes in the room. It's like, especially if you're used to that repetitive push-shove kind of thing. And a lot of times as couples, we fight like 8th graders, right? When they gather on the playground, fight, and everyone's going, fight. And they're like, come on, no, hit me, go on. And no one's really wanting to be the first one to hit, but we're egging the other person on so that we can blame them later for hitting you first. That always aggravated me. Like, if you're going to fight, just pop them one and get it over with. But we're not doing the whole dance thing where everyone's like, come on, get in there, and egging it on. Sometimes your kids will egg you on just so you get it over with. or to get the attention off themselves. Because it'll usually be, there'll be a correction going on, and then all of a sudden, well, what did you tell her she could do? I've never said, well, she said, you said. Suddenly, all of a sudden, all the attention's off of here, right? Passive aggressive. They're like, this is sweet. Now they're ticked at each other. You know, look, guys, I'm just trying to please you here. Yeah, well, we'll talk to you later. You know, you do this to me. And then you do that right in front of her. And I'm not going to. And then the wife comes back, and there's this whole thing that goes on, and the kids like in the room playing video games. You know, they got you. They got you. We just had a rule at all costs, man. It was like, sometimes I remember looking at my husband, he'd look at me like, oh, I want to argue with you right now. But we can't do that because we're in front of the kids. We're not going to give them that, because when we give them that, it gives them power. And now suddenly the triangle starts happening, and we're fighting over something that's not even the issue that we're trying to solve. You ever have those fights where you fought for so hard, for so long, and then you're like, okay, we should settle this. What are we arguing about? Well, I thought you said the thing. No, I don't. No, I thought we settled that part. And then it's like you don't even know. Sometimes we fight just to fight because we're mad. So know yourself when you come home from work. If you came home at 4, don't bring that to your family. Go for a walk, do something. Do some self-talk. Get with God and say, God, I need to bring that down so that I can deal with my family appropriately. And see, if you have the skills, they sound like this. You're on the phone, and she's like, oh, what time are you going to get here? Well, I was planning on getting there around 6, but I think I need an extra half an hour. I'm working through something right now. So we need to be able to communicate with each other. Oh, and then she knows what that means. Like, okay, because I want to come home as happy as I can. Right now is not that moment. Right? Don't go to the bar and alter your thinking. Don't do some of these things. Work through the emotion and then show up there. And bring the best of who you are to your family. It'll be amazing how everything changes. Amen? Anyone have questions about any of this? Now I can't remember. I said I was going to deal with something in the beginning. Shooty Baruti. Yeah.
Through that, how do I work through that in that moment and not snap?
Yeah. There's various aspects of that, because you might have laid out a boundary when it comes to, she's talking about, for those watching online, let's say physical touch escalates you and you're trying to have a decent response. So if somebody pinches you or you stub your toe even. How many of us have lost our mind stubbing our toe? There's nobody else around, right? But you in that chair that you stub your toe on and stuff's coming out your mouth. You're like violent about it. You feel violated that the chair was there and somehow this didn't work out for you. But there's something about unwanted touch that's aggressive towards you versus, hey, somebody doesn't know. Like I shared, I got a family member who, when they go to talk to me, they always go like that on my shoulder. Like, just talk to me. But they'll be like, hey, Mayor, what do you think about that? Should we go to the store? And sometimes I'm like, leave the arm alone. You know what I mean? There's something to that. But if you have something from trauma that triggers that as a violation in you, adrenaline's going to go off. So you have to do self-talk for the sake of your brain, because there's a little spot in the brain that's near your cingulate that sends the message to the little adrenaline glands that are sitting on your kidneys and saying, bear attack, right? No, it's not a bear attack. You just got pinched a little bit. You know, somebody touched you like that or put their hand on your back, and suddenly you're like, bear attack. Well, that's too big of a response for the violation, right? So if you sit and you're like, I got to control myself, you're not giving your brain a reality check. You have to say something out loud so it can record something different. Like, okay, that was an accident, or I have a boundary for that, or whatever the setting is, whatever the situation is. We had a girl that lived with us for a few years and I'm like Miss Touchy-Feely, like, how are you? And I always have to refrain back, like, just keep your hands to yourself, because I'm a hugger and whatever. And I just went like this on her back, and she just went stiff, just like that, and then started crying immediately. And I was like, oh, probably should ask her if I can touch her because of everything she had been through, right? So if somebody flicked her or something like that, that would be... like she may just pass out even, that particular person. It would be so great. Because everything got recorded loud through the trauma. So a small touch will say, volume, when really you have to give yourself the reality check. No, actually, that's on a 3. That's not all the way up to a 10 on the radio. Breathe through it and practice keeping your voice tone, but a certain way. And then when you walk off, give yourself a reality check again. Because if you don't, your body will continue to go to high adrenaline on the situation right now. It goes into survival mode. In fact, one young lady that we had was prostituted from the time she was 7 on and came to our house when she was 15. So that's a long time of abuse. And I've shared this story before, but for those who are new, foster homes didn't want her because she smelled so bad. Like her sweat was right up there with a skunk. It was like rotten tuna. And we'd have her shower 3 times a day. And we took her to all kinds with infection, this, whatever. Nothing. But then I took her to a psychiatrist, a specialist in the area of trauma. And he said, oh, that's really common. That's common for POWs. If they get rescued and they come back home or whatever, that's their body's way of warding off any more predators. So it'll automatically produce this rancid smell. And as she got comfortable in the home, after a while, it was only 2 showers a day. And then, because she could clear out a whole side of the church. They'd be like, what is happening? Wow. And she just showered. But the adrenaline from being with people, the uptightness would just come on and she'd sweat. And it was like, Lord, help us. So, yeah. So that's a high level of trauma. So you can imagine that's what she went through. So the trauma that you went through recorded really loud. And so a touch, a bee bite or a bug bite can even be like extreme. Like think about it. Sometimes I often think about how we're trained with the mosquito. The size of the mosquito and the bite. We are trained to take huge action. Like if they're on your leg or something, you're like, and it's almost like you need this force that is like, I'm going to kill you, and all you have to do is go like that or just smear them. But there's a reaction because we feel violated. It's violating me, right? So the more trauma we have, the more those kinds of things will trigger that within you, and you'll have stronger reactions. Huh? Spiders, all of that type of stuff. And we put in perspective, it's like, actually, it's that big. It's that big. And you feel it, and you just, I just got bit. I'll wipe it off. But we don't. We're like, the mosquitoes are just, and it's extreme. It's extreme, but something about that, as a kid, we recorded that loud. That violation was, I don't like that. I don't like the buzzing sound. I don't like, and your body gets, and the more you have that, the harder you hit the mosquito. And you're actually whapping yourself. It doesn't take much to kill a mosquito, but you're like, bam, you're hitting your leg. And then we're not upset about how hard we hit our leg. Think about this. If I go like this and stop the sensation of how they're violating me, versus if I'm trying to stop that level of pain and I meet it with a higher level of pain. Die, bam, right? This hurts way more than that little beep that they're doing. But we'll take that high of a reaction to something that's actually small. It's training. You see it? Any other questions?
Can I share something?
Yes.
Okay, so just as Mary was talking, I just went through DBT and graduated, so I wanted to share a little bit of perspective on that, a lot of things that I learned when I was in that. So as Mary talked about, when you're at a 5 and you're rising, you're going into what they call skills breakdown level. You're raging out, you're yelling, you're slamming, you're not able to effectively communicate at all, just really acting out. So there's skills that you can use as distress tolerance skills that can bring you down from your elevated where you're at to a more effective level where you can face the crisis or the situation. One that really worked for me was called the TIP skill. That's temperature, intense exercise, and paced breathing. So with the temperature, you can put an ice pack on your face in increments of 30 seconds. You can submerge your face in ice cold water. That's a technique that, like, with submersion, it resets your body, and like it can even change your blood pressure, your physiological reaction. And then intense exercise, as Mary said, going for a walk or getting that adrenaline out. The paced breathing, you can pair that with muscle relaxation, where you're using sets of your body and focusing from head to toe, taking your mind off of things. And then as you're practicing this, it brings you back down to a level where you can use like interpersonal effectiveness, whatever skills that you may have to then communicate with that person or problem solve. It just really brings you down. And I found that to be really helpful for me.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else try that or do that? There is something about that reality check. Just like I said, to reset the heart. If somebody is traumatized and you give them a hug, where do you usually pat them, right? It's here or right between their shoulder blades. It's okay. So you're grounding them. It resets everything to go, oh, okay, okay. Very similar to ice water. That would sound more invasive, but if you're hot escalated and this tree is taking over your frontal lobes and you cannot think to even process what you're saying, you got to bring yourself back. How are you going to do that? So part of grounding is bringing, using the water temperature or whatever it is, up in the face, or go take a shower, or go for a walk, or something that says, I'm bringing myself home. Otherwise, I'm going to float out here, and I don't know how far out in space I'm going to get. See, then you're not grounded. Does that make sense? How many of you have suffered where you know there have been times in your life that you got triggered, all of a sudden it's lit, and you're like, I'm headed to outer space. It's like you left the spaceship and now you're floating out there and you can't get back to your ship. Yeah. So, you're like, there it goes. I guess I'm going to be in outer space for a while. It's that kind of feeling. And to have somebody pull the cord and pull them toward you and say, we got you. Get on the ship. And just do that and be like, okay, you're like, okay, all right, I'm back. And we have to do that. Now, if you don't know those social skills and you're dealing with a person who's floating and you're demanding of them that they need to get it together right now and give you an answer right now, and they're out here floating because they're like, everything that's ever happened to them that's horrible is now lit, and you're trying to talk to them like as if it's not. Now what? We have to take that social cue and just go, okay, right now we're not solving world peace. We need to get at this. Just, it's okay, calm down. I'm here. It's all right. You're going to be okay. We'll work through this, honey. We'll work through this. It's okay. Yeah? So it's very useful if you're an EMT or you work in the ER, any of those places too, because everything's triggered outward. There's a lot of fear. And if can you imagine being picked up in an ambulance? You're like, what's happening? Are you okay? All right, we're going to get you on a gurney right now. And we're doing this whole thing and get in there like, I don't know. We're calling in that way. The person laying there would be like, goodbye, I'm floating. See you, cruel world. They'd just be gone. But it has to be like, oh, no, we have you. Okay, we're only a few minutes from the hospital, ma'am. We're going to help you out here right now. We're going to help you. And they'll use terms like that so that it grounds you back to like, okay. And if we don't give opportunity for somebody who jumps and goes to a 5 or an 8, and we don't have a way, we don't see that social skill, or cue, I should say, then we don't use the skill to bring them back down. But we expect them to talk to us at a 1. That ain't happening, right? Or you do, like 2 kids are just fuming at each other. One's just bawling. You're like, you kiss your brother and tell him you love him. I might do that, but there's going to be some death thoughts involved. You know what I mean? Because I'm not at a place that I even want him to touch me. And I don't want to kiss him right now. So give it some time. Then you can hug and make up. But we need to de-escalate it first. Any other questions? Yeah. So in working through tonight, the biggest thing is to know yourself. I keep saying this over and over. If you don't know yourself, you don't know when you're floating, how to grab a hold of it, when you've lost it, when you're actually speaking out of your own pain. Like you had a rough day at work, it hurt your feelings or whatever, and then you got to solve an argument with your kids. You're like, I don't really care what's going on with them. I'm in pain right now. Well, you're going to have to override that and deal with them because they're little people. Sometimes little people are teenagers, and that's part of parenting that says, I got to pull it together, deal with this, and then I'll take care of this other thing. Amen? So we're going to continue on this question. I'm taking my time because, if people were in counseling, we would take our time. Because there's too many classes out there where it's like, here you go, here's your skills, now go do that, run along. And you're like, I got a certificate. I don't know what I'm doing. What is it she said? Right? So we have to break it down into a point where we're actually understanding we all have been lied to and been wounded. And we all got trees that when they get lit, we're not pretty. Well, how do I know that? It didn't go in pretty. So it's not going to come out pretty. When it shows itself, it's going to be like, that's why we do things like I always call it wigging out. If I wigged out, then the next day I got to go to work or my husband's got to go to work and we just say nothing. That's what we used to do. I'll be like, that's kind of embarrassing when I lost my mind last night, but I'm not going to acknowledge that I lost it. I found it this morning, and so I'm going to work now, right? And it's not revisited. It's not closed out. It just hangs. Not good. Not good. Let's stand. I'm going to pray with everybody before you go. Thank you, Ashley, for sharing that. That's good stuff. Father, we just come before you in the name of Jesus, and we thank you that you're giving us knowledge, and understanding the knowledge then will turn into wisdom. Well, Father, we just ask that if there's anybody here tonight that for the first time you just heard like, oh, I didn't realize my body was in control or my soul was bossing me around. I need to get myself in a position where God can flip that for me. So I understand my destiny, where I'm going, and what my point is here on this earth, so I can develop boundaries around that and love the people you've assigned me to. In the mighty name of Jesus, we thank you. You're doing this in us tonight. Flip us, Lord. Get us to that spot. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for showing up. God bless you.